In 1975, inside a lab in Rochester, New York, a 24-year-old engineer flipped a switch and invented the future, a camera with no film. He carried it down the hall to show his bosses, the most powerful company in the history of photography. And they told him to hide it, not kill it, hide it, because that little machine in his hands was about to make them the richest company on earth and then erase them from it. This is the story of how Kodak invented the digital camera, buried it to protect a fortune, and handed the future to everyone else for free. And the part almost nobody tells you, it didn't have to happen. Because another company, holding the exact same cards, did the opposite, and they're still here today. So grab a seat. Let me walk you through the greatest self-inflicted collapse in business history. To understand how hard they fell, you gotta understand how high they were. It starts with one man, George Eastman, a high school dropout, a bank clerk from Rochester obsessed with a hobby almost nobody had, photography. Back then, taking a picture meant glass plates, toxic chemicals, and a tent for a darkroom. It was for professionals and rich weirdos. Eastman had a different idea. What if anybody could do it? In 1888, he released the Kodak camera. One button, 100 shots, and a slogan that changed the world. You press the button, we do the rest. You'd shoot your 100 photos, mail the whole camera back to Rochester, and they'd develop it, print it, reload it, and ship it home. But here's the real trick, the move that made them untouchable. Eastman didn't sell cameras to get rich. He practically gave them away. $25, then $5, then a $1 camera by 1900. Because the camera was never the product. The film was. Cameras were the razor, film was the blades. And film ran at about 70% margins. Every wedding, every birthday, every vacation on planet Earth ran through Kodak's film, Kodak's paper, Kodak's chemicals. They called it the Kodak moment, and they owned the moment. By the mid-90s, Kodak had 90% of the American film market, $16 billion in revenue, 140,000 employees, a brand as famous as Coca-Cola. They weren't a company, they were an empire, and empires never believe they can fall. Which brings us back to that lab, 1975. The engineer's name was Steve Sasson. His creation was ugly, 8 pounds the size of a toaster, and it took 23 seconds to record one black and white image at 0.01 megapixels onto a cassette tape. By today's standards, junk. But that was never the point. The point was what it meant. No film, no paper, no chemicals, no Kodak moment left to sell. Sasson showed it to management, and their reaction wasn't excitement. It was fear wearing a smile. In his own words, it was filmless photography. So management's reaction was, that's cute, but don't tell anyone about it. Sit with that. The most important invention in the company's future and the instinct was to make it disappear. And it wasn't a one-time slip. In 1989, Sasson and a colleague built the first modern digital single-lens reflex camera, the blueprint for every professional digital camera that came after. Kodak's response, they refused to sell it. Marketing said it would eat film sales. So the company that invented digital photography twice locked it in a drawer. Not because they were stupid, because they were rich, and that is the trap. Here's what most people get wrong about Kodak. They think Kodak missed digital. They didn't. Kodak saw digital coming from 20 years out. In the 90s, CEO George Fisher poured over $2 billion into digital research. They held thousands of digital patents. At one point, Kodak sold one of the most popular digital cameras in America. So if they saw it, had the tech, and had the money, why did they still die? One word: math. Every time Kodak sold a digital camera, they made a few bucks if they were lucky. A Harvard study found that in 2001, Kodak lost around $60 on every digital camera it sold. Meanwhile, every roll of film printed pure gold at 70% margins. So put yourself in the CEO's chair. Do you pour everything into a new business that loses money and kills your old one? Or protect the machine printing billions? Antonio Perez, who took the top job in 2005, flat out called digital cameras a crappy business. And on paper, he wasn't wrong. In 2011, Kodak's films still made $34 million in profit. Their digital cameras lost $349 million. That's the golden cage. The thing making you rich is the exact thing you have to destroy. And nobody, no CEO, no board, no shareholder, wants to be the one who burns down the golden goose. So they didn't. They kept feeding it while the whole world walked away. Now here's the part that turns this from a tragedy into a choice. Kodak wasn't the only film giant staring down the digital apocalypse. On the other side of the world sat Fujifilm. Same business, same fat film margins, same death sentence, same cards. But Fujifilm's leaders asked a different question. Kodak asked, "How do we protect photography?" Fujifilm asked, "What are we, really, if not a photography company?" And their answer was chemistry. Decades of mastering film chemistry, gelatin, antioxidants, ultra-thin coatings, turned out to be good for a lot more than pictures. So, Fujifilm declared war on its own identity. Under CEO Shigetaka Komori and a plan called Vision 75, they tore the company apart and rebuilt it into healthcare, into flat-screen display films, and, I'm dead serious, into cosmetics. The same antioxidants that keep a photo from fading, they slow human skin from aging. Fujifilm launched a skincare line and it sold. Today, Fujifilm is a healthcare and electronics powerhouse worth tens of billions. Same starting hand as Kodak. Opposite ending. So next time somebody tells you technology killed Kodak, remember, Fujifilm sat in the exact same fire and walked out alive. It was never fate. It was a decision. For Kodak, the bill came due on January 19th, 2012. The company that invented the digital camera, that owned the Kodak moment, that once employed 140,000 people, filed for bankruptcy. And then came the humiliation. To survive, Kodak had to sell the crown jewels, its patents. More than 1,000 of its digital imaging patents went up for auction. And guess who bought them? Apple, Google, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, Samsung. The exact companies that won the digital future Kodak invented and buried. The whole portfolio, once valued north of $2 billion, went for around $525 million, pennies on the dollar. The empire that put a camera in every hand on earth sold the future to the winners for scraps on its way out the door. Kodak didn't vanish. It crawled out of bankruptcy in 2013, a fraction of its old self, and quietly became a business-to-business printing and packaging company. A ghost wearing a legendary name. And in 2020, and maybe the strangest twist of all, Kodak announced it was jumping into pharmaceuticals, backed by a $765 million government loan to make drug ingredients. The stock rocketed. Then it cratered, down over 40% in days, buried under insider trading allegations and a federal investigation. Even the comeback came with a scandal. So what's the real lesson here? It's not adapt or die. That's a bumper sticker. The real lesson is darker and a lot more useful. Kodak had the invention. They had the warning, 20 years of it. They had the money, $2 billion of it. They had everything except the willingness to destroy the thing that made them rich. And that same trap is stalking every dominant company you can name right now. The oil giant, the bank, the social network. The future always shows up. The only question is whether you bury it to protect your best quarter or bet the company on the thing that scares you. Kodak pressed the button and let somebody else do the rest. I'm Market Mo. If this made you think, you know what to do. I'll see you on the next one.